All right, Lauren. So this podcast, this is for teachers. This is for high school students. They're busy. This is meant to be short and sweet, no fluff. We cut right into it. So if it's cool with you, we're going to jump right into it.
Let's do it.
Okay, first question. I'm asking every guest this question, so I'm going to keep a tally and do a nice little report at the end of it. It also kind of sets a tone for the rest of the interview. Pineapple on pizza, yes or no?
Always.
Okay, that's a good answer.
Always.
Do you have a favorite pizza?
I actually would say probably pineapple.
Wow.
With bacon.
Okay, so I think that's like a version of the Hawaiian pizza, yeah.
And you can also never go wrong with potatoes on your pizza.
I just had a fancy pizza this past weekend with some special cheese and some pizza or potato.
I would even do a combo of those three.
Okay, so now that the audience likes you, because I'm also a pineapple on pizza kind of guy, Lauren, who are you and what do you do for work?
So my name is Lauren, and I am the proud Chief Kits Officer of Kits for a Cause. So I think I can single-handedly say that nobody else has my title, which is something I'm very proud of, and I run a social enterprise.
Okay, that's awesome. Actually, that's a good segue. Usually we're going to jump to this kind of part later in the show, but we call this the HOG. So part of the meetings that we do at My Blueprint, to be more effective in our meetings, we set a certain amount of time for each point and we label it. So we label it with, it can either be an update, it can be a decision, it can be a discussion, or once a meeting, we can also have a HOG, where it might take longer, it might not, but this is kind of where you get to kind of monologue or you get to speak to something that you're passionate about. Oftentimes, even myself included, people mix up nonprofit and social enterprise. So Lauren, can you explain what a social enterprise is and maybe how it differs from a nonprofit?
Yeah, absolutely. So a social enterprise is for profit, for purpose.
Cool.
And so a great way to think of it is this a business that is operating for a greater purpose? So a quick example would be Tom's. They have a one-for-one shoe model. So you buy a pair of shoes with Tom's and they donate a pair of shoes to someone in need. A charity or a nonprofit is someone who's operating not for profits. So that's where you hear, sometimes you'll hear not for profit. And so what they do is they deliver goods and services, but they're not receiving a profit back. They ask for donations, but the donations go directly to their services. So imagine the difference between a food bank. So the food bank, they receive the donations, they give out the donations. So that circle of incoming and going out. Whereas if you were to look at a kind bar is something that someone pays for. It has a positive impact, and their purpose is that they share not only kindness, but then they're also sharing healthy and safe food for everyone.
That makes sense, and that's so awesome. I think 10 Trees would probably be another one, right?
Yeah, that's a great one.
Yeah.
And now Kids for a Cause.
There you go. Yeah. Well, tell us a bit more about Kids for a Cause, because it's pretty awesome, and it's kind of a cool intersection between nonprofit and social enterprise, right?
We think of ourselves as almost the kind of connector, or lately I've been using the matchmaker for good. So imagine you have people in the world who want to do good things, but have no idea where to get started. So it could be a class of really eager students who've just learned about a social justice issue and now want to take action. It could be a church or a faith-based group. It could be a company. And so they come to us and they say, Lauren, I want to do something, but help me because it's really difficult. I've called up local homeless shelters, or I don't even know a local homeless shelter in my community. Help match me to one. And then on the other side, there's these nonprofits and social service agencies. So imagine it could be your local homeless shelter, it could be a food bank, it could even be a patient program in your hospital. They have all of this need, but they're not receiving enough donations. And so imagine you have all of this need, all of these people that need things like socks, underwear, hygiene items, food, back to school supplies, etc. They have all this need, but they're not receiving the right items. Because what's really interesting is nonprofits actually receive 50% of what they need, and the rest of the 50% of items that are donated, they have to rehome because it's the wrong item.
Wow.
So people have the best of intentions, but what we're doing is we're taking this group of people who wants to do good with this group of people who is doing good but needs more, and we're matching them together. So we teach this group of people how to host a kit packing group, how to host a kit pack for this group, and then we match them together, and they then can connect and share the impact as they continue to grow and continue to help out.
That's so cool. It's a match made in heaven, you could say.
Yeah.
We'll come back to it later where you can talk about how people can learn a bit more about Kits for Cause and how to get involved, especially at the school level. Okay, so now, Lauren, we know a little bit more about you and what keeps you busy between 9 and 5, but what about 5 to 9? Any passions, any hobbies, any
I wish it was just from 9 to 5.
Sure. That's fair.
Making a difference in the world is a full-time job. And what's really interesting is that when you're passionate about what you do, there is no 9 to 5.
Yeah.
And that doesn't have to be a bad thing. I think what people can do now is they can find what they're really good at, what that passion is, and find a way to make money in order to sustain themselves. And that to me is really what social enterprise does, is it makes it possible for you to do good by doing good business. So for me, outside of 9 to 5, I am playing with my dog,
Sure. Yeah.
or I'm visiting a local farmer's market,
Nice.
eating pizza, lots of exciting things.
Yeah. I want to come back to that passion point actually, because you hear it all the time, and something I preach as well. It's that cliche quote of if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life kind of thing, right? But as a high school student, it's hard to figure out what that passion is without having the experience that you gain just as you get older. Was this social enterprise something you knew you would always be passionate about, or how did you get interested and exposed to this world?
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
It was actually high school that changed me and kind of beyond high school. So what most people wouldn't know is that Damien and I actually went to high school together.
Spoiler.
This is a spoiler, and maybe Damien will cut it out, who knows?
Yeah.
But for me in high school, I was really passionate about giving back, but I was even more passionate about theater and musical theater and acting and singing. And so if you were to ask 16-year-old Lauren what she'd be doing, you would say that like, I'm a celebrity and really rich and just worried about what Hollywood thinks.
Yeah.
And it wasn't actually until my grade 12 class that I had an elective, and it worked well with my timetable that I could get into a class with a bunch of my friends.
Okay.
And the class was world politics.
Right.
And so what I learned in that one semester of school in the world politics class was how passionate I actually was about social justice issues, that I had started to apply and audition for schools for acting. And halfway through the semester, I went and met with my guidance counselor and said, okay, forget all of these acting schools. I appreciate that they've accepted my audition, but I actually don't want to do this at all.
Wow.
And so I turned that passion that I had learned that I had through this world politics class into something that I said, I need to learn more about, and I need to learn what is it in that passion, because just saying I'm passionate about world politics, that isn't a job. So instead, I learned that what I was actually really passionate about was creating community. And that can look like many different things for many different people. But after high school, I spent some time living and working in South America. I was a public high school teacher. And the reason why I chose that route at first was because I was passionate about bringing people together and creating a community space. But then I also realized that in order to create community, you have to have education and you have to have information sharing. And so I continued to kind of dive into that idea. And what I realized that in that passion that I was good at, because you have to find something that you are good at, not just like, I was really good at making an impact and finding ways to take issues and to take problems and create really impactful solutions. And so for me, kind of what's been my constant compass has been, am I making the biggest impact possible? And so it's continued to be my indicator of, okay, this seems really cool and fun, but am I going to make an impact? And that's how I can make a decision of whether or not I'm going to do it.
I love that so much. And I don't know if you remember this, but it's usually behind your back. When I'm introducing you or talking about you to other people, I love to refer to you as the future Prime Minister of Canada, because I think you are great at making an impact.
Thank you.
It's awesome what you're doing.
Oh, I have to figure out what year I'm going to run then.
Well, yeah, give it a few years, because you're doing amazing things with kits right now. Maybe let the pandemic fizzle out, but
I don't want to deal with that.
No. So in that vein, so maybe I'm a high school student listening to this, and this strikes a chord with me. I love everything you just said. I'm interested. I want to be the next chief kits officer. Is there a specific pathway or maybe it was just kind of what you were talking about, where taking a chance, having some amazing life experience and trying to figure out how you can build community? Like, is there a direction that you would tell someone to move towards?
Yeah, I would say understand what makes you different and understand what you're good at. And you will never know in high school whether or not you're a good lawyer.
Right.
You will never know in high school whether or not you're a good nurse or doctor.
Right.
So kind of understanding and saying, well, this is what I'm going to be and this is what it is. You're setting yourself up to fail, because what if you get into week 1 of med school and you pass out because you're grossed out by the first lab? Or what if you get into week 2 of law school and you figure out, oh my gosh, I get way too nervous in front of people and I can't make an argument anymore.
Yeah.
So I think what's really interesting is for people in terms of looking what their next step is after high school, don't focus so much on what that profession will be, because if you look at the stats now, the profession will change, and we're no longer in a world that someone's job is someone's job for decades in terms of a role. But if you're building a career, build a career under what you're good at. So understanding, are you good at making arguments on how to lengthen your curfew with your parents? Are you really good at staying organized and being on the ball and ensuring that your schedule is up to date? Are you good at talking to people? Are you, like, there's so many ways that you can take skills that you're learning and building on and experiencing within high school, and you can flip that into making your next step in your profession a successful one. So I think for me, what I didn't realize is that in high school, I had 2 jobs always, and I didn't realize that those skills that I was learning were actually building a way to my future. But if you look at it on paper, I worked at a store in the mall and I taught musical theater. So those seem very random and very hard to transfer to then later working on Parliament Hill.
Yeah.
But they really did, because I was able to articulate, I'm really good at working with people and I'm really good at creating solutions.
Do you think you just noticed that on your own, or did that come later? Were you able to realize that when you were 18?
No.
Yeah.
No, I didn't, I knew I was good at the things I was doing, but I didn't know that those experiences and those skills that I was building on, I didn't know it would be so transferable.
Yeah.
And I think it was still that I was focused on, this is the role that I want to do. And even into university. So when I returned back from living in South America, I went to university. I went to Carleton for international relations and politics. And so when I came back, I just assumed that I would work for the government, because during school I was working for the government. And so I just assumed that that was something that I would continue to do.
Right.
But then I realized and kind of looked inside and said, okay, am I making the biggest impact possible? And I realized that within the government space, there was way too much red tape and they were way too slow. I was like, I want to make an impact.
Yeah.
And so that's when I left my government role and went to work for, at the time, it was the school board. And then it was the same experience. I said, am I making the biggest impact possible? And I said, no, I think that I could actually find more impact within the nonprofit / social enterprise space.
That's so huge. And I hope the students listening to this will pause and, pause the podcast and just do an exercise to kind of list down what you think you're good at. It's something that Lauren and I probably weren't proactive about. And luckily, maybe we realized it in the subconscious. And obviously, Lauren made some amazing decisions when she figured that out. But it's something that I even have to remind myself today to double down on what you're good at. There's lots of people who are good at really different things, and you don't need to be good at every single thing. So focus on what you're really good at and what you can control, and build out the rest of your team to kind of round it out, right?
And I think the message too is not just figuring out what is it that you're good at, but how do you share that with others?
Yeah.
Because that's really important. If you can't advocate for yourself, and not everyone needs to be a salesperson, but if you can't advocate for, I may not necessarily have years of experience, but I can advocate for knowing that I'm capable at this skill, or I'm capable due to my experience and showing kind of how that trajectory works. So I think that what's really interesting is once you figure out what it is that you're good at, then figure out how to advocate for yourself, because you will continue to find different opportunities because you're sharing with the world what you're good at and what you like to do. Because otherwise, how is someone supposed to know?
100%. And I'm a little bit biased, but that's why I'm such a big believer in digital portfolios
Yeah,
within a classroom, to be able to document evidence of those things, of the things you're good at and the skills that you have, so
absolutely.
that you can share that outside of the classroom, right? Uh,
And documenting that is a good reminder, because you won't remember a year or years later, but if you're documenting that every step of the way, you'll be able to reflect back and then provide concrete examples.
I love it. Yeah. So on that note, with having the skills and recognizing what you are good at, Lauren, have you ever hired somebody or been part of a hiring decision before?
Yes.
Yes. So let me pose this question to you. You have two applicants, same exact experience and resume. They look the same on paper. What skills do you look for that's going to set one apart from the other?
Something that I look for in my future hires versus what I used to look for. I
Okay.
used to look for just experience. And what I've realized is that you don't have to have the experience if you have the grit and the perseverance.
Yeah.
And for me, that's what's made me successful. In my family, I was the first one to go to university. So I didn't have anything to reflect on, and I didn't have anyone to kind of show me what the path would look like into university and then after university into a career. But instead, I had the grit and the perseverance that I knew that I could advocate for myself, but I could also get the job done no matter what. And so for me, that's what I look for in a candidate. And that's what I wish they would teach in school. In if I could do a class of a combination of grit, perseverance, taxes, and learning about mortgages,
Yeah.
that's what I would have loved to have had in high school.
No kidding. Do you remember an example of somebody that you have hired that did a good job demonstrating grit or tenacity?
Yeah, I think that someone who believes in themselves and shows that they, like, someone who calls out, listen, I don't have the experience that you're looking for, but I know that I can get the job done. And here's an example of when I got the job done.
Yeah.
That to me really speaks highly of the person. And in terms of perseverance, I think that someone who is constantly finding ways to kind of put themselves in front of you. So even if I don't have a role available, if someone's reaching out to me and saying, this is the type of organization that I identify and you're the type of leader that I want to be a part of, if they're continuing to find ways to put themselves in front of me and also continuing to find ways to grow the business without even being a part of the business, that to me is someone who's really gritty and is going to get in there and get the job done.
Yeah, and students listening to this, I can't recommend that last point enough. Just filling out an application and firing it off is not going to get the hiring manager's attention anymore. You need to show them that I want to work for your company and I want to work in this role and this is why I'm a good fit, and just show all the ways you can to stand out, to make it that you only had applied for this role and that same application couldn't be used somewhere else and it was just hyper customized to that organization.
Yeah, and it does take a lot of time and effort. I
Sure.
completely recognize that. But I think what's really interesting is if you're in high school and kind of thinking about what's in the future, I would even reach out to companies that you find that you're like-minded with. And so you don't have to be like me in having to have that warm, fuzzy feeling every time you're looking for a job, but you might actually get that warm, fuzzy feeling from something that identifies with you, whether you want to be in a space that you can use your math skills, or if you want to be in a space that you know that you can elaborate on problem solving, whatever that is. Look for like-minded businesses and organizations that you could potentially identify with, because there are so many opportunities that you can either do a co-op program, that you can simply connect with an individual who works there and ask them for a coffee. And that's something that I kind of just fell on in high school, and it was through actually back to the politics class. In the politics class, I was chosen to be a part of now I'm going to sound like such a nerd, but I'm proud of it. I was chosen to be a part of, Damien, I don't know if you remember this, it was called the Great Debate.
No, but I can picture you in it.
Yeah, well, I feel like there's some people who I was against in the Great Debate who still have a great amount of animosity towards me, but that's fine.
Yeah.
But what I did in this experience is the person who was awarding the winner at the time was a town councilor, and I stayed in touch with him, and I've actually had several now business relationships that have been possible because of that past relationship. And so for someone like myself who was coming from a family that wasn't necessarily connected enough or didn't have the network that other people have, what I realized was back to that grit and perseverance is that I was going to do everything in my power to stay connected to people that I was meeting throughout different experiences. And it doesn't mean that you have to feel like you're whining and dining someone, but instead it's continuing to stay updated and connected, and that person could potentially introduce you to your future employer or even introduce you to your future opportunity.
100%. I can't recommend that one enough either. You know, again, it's a cliche saying, but your network really is your net worth. And
Absolutely.
people love to talk about themselves and they love to help other people out, especially when they've been helped out along the way. So reach out to those people. They may not have a job opening for you right now, but if you're asking for some advice or for some guidance on how to get more information about, is this the right job or fit organization for me, they'll talk to you, especially if you're a high school student and you frame it the right way.
And people respect, people absolutely respect when you say like, I really enjoy your business, or I really kind of value your opinion. And like you said, people want to give their advice, so ask for it.
Yeah, and be authentic. Right? Just say, hey, I'm a high school student. I'm not really sure, but I would love if you were able to tell me about your story and what you do for
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, let's do some rapid fire questions, Lauren. Okay. You could write anything on a billboard. What would it say?
Make impact.
Make impact. Okay. I mean, that goes back to what you were talking about before, right? Where that's kind of your North Star. How can you make the biggest amount of impact?
Yeah, or like puppies for everyone.
Those are both very good ones. Okay. IQ or EQ. So intelligent quotient or emotional quotient. You can only pick one. Which one is it? Yeah. EQ. All day. Hands down. Yeah. Good answer. Let's bring it back to high school. So maybe it's world politics because it sounds like this was a huge pivotal moment for you. Yeah. But did you have a favorite class or a favorite subject in high school?
I loved world politics and drama.
I was going to say it has to be the theater, right?
Yeah, it was drama for sure.
What was your favorite high school, like the actual organized plays that you guys did? We would have done one every 2 years, right?
Yes. The favorite play that I did is I played Abigail in The Crucible.
Okay. Wow. Is there anything on YouTube that you want to tell people to go check out?
I hope not.
Okay. That's fair. Do you have a favorite teacher growing up?
Teacher?
Yeah.
Yes. I had two. So Mr. Castronova, who was my world politics teacher, and he challenged me because actually, and I didn't mention this earlier, but when I had that open period and I needed a class, I ended up actually trying to drop that class because the first week I was like, this is too heavy for me. I'm not interested. Yeah. So I fought with the guidance counselor and Mr. Castronovo to get out of that class. And he ended up coming to me and saying, like, there's something here, you need to stay in this class. And so I'm so grateful because I would have had a very different life. And maybe I've been a celebrity, but I won't hold it against him. And then my drama teacher, Miss Forte, was an incredible inspiration in just kind of exploring myself and my emotions. And then my music teacher.
It's amazing. Have you reached out to Mr. Castronovo in the last, few years?
I haven't in the last few years, but it was interesting when I came back from Ecuador and then went to university, kind of all of those pieces that we talked about earlier of everything kind of fitting in and falling into place. I realized the pivotal moments that had happened in high school. And so I actually wrote any teacher that had made an impact on me, I wrote them a quick letter. That's awesome. Just to thank them and kind of say what I was up to.
Cool. Okay. Closing question then, Lauren. Let's do this one. Let's say you're the superintendent. You're tasked with making sure that all the students who graduate your school, they graduate with one skill. What is that one skill?
That one skill is perseverance.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, you've already talked a few times of how that was such a huge thing. It's been a huge part in my life as well. Just because someone doesn't answer that first email or that first phone call, that first text message doesn't mean it's over. It just means people are busy, especially now more than ever. So if you really care about something, you persevere and good things will come from it.
You persevere. And I do think, like, to me, like, grit and perseverance comes hand in hand, because I think that with grit, to me, it's that difference between kind of book smart versus street smart. And I think there needs to be a balance, because there are so many times that I've felt kind of like a fish out of water because I didn't necessarily have that book smart element to what I could add to the conversation. But in the perseverance of just learning more and kind of pushing through, I've been able to either fake it till I made it or figure out kind of what I needed to learn and identify more. But having street smarts and understanding the world around us and how everything kind of works and works against us, it's really important.
You can always be the person who works the hardest in the room, right?
Yes.
So cool.
Yeah.
All right, Lauren, where can people learn more about you or Kits for a Cause?
So they can go to kitsforacause.com, KITS, foracause.com, and learn more about what we're doing, our COVID safe options. We work with so many schools who want to give back, but are sick of the idea around the holiday season of just receiving a laundry list of items that they have to actually physically go out and shop for. And so instead, we work one-on-one with our charitable partners in designing the perfect custom kit for them and in that moment, because the last thing you want to be is a part of that group who's giving 50% of donations that they don't actually need. So we create all of that customization between the charity, and then we match them directly to the group or the school. And so a school can sign up, and for something like $20, $25, they can create this life-changing kit for an individual in need.
I think that stat about 50% of the goods just not being in the right place is probably something that most people didn't know about, and you guys are solving a huge need. So
yeah, and people have the best of intentions.
Yeah, it's the thing. You don't know what you don't know.
No.
But now we know. So guys, check out the comments to learn a bit more about Kits for Cause and how you can get in touch with them and with Lauren. Lauren, thank you for inspiring the future change makers of the world listening to this. I'm excited to see all those students kind of figure out what they're good at, what they're passionate about, and how they can make the biggest impact possible, just like you.